I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well today. Today is Wednesday, September 28th, 2022. Let me start off by saying happy birthday to my brother, Wayne McFarlane. I wrote a poem this morning or last night called The Wayne of the World, and I'll share that with all of you on Facebook in the next day or so after Wayne has had a chance to see it and respond to it. But it's a tribute to my brother, the artist, the leader of Ipso Facto and the head of this musician wing of the McFarlane clan. Well, today, Wednesday, we always talk about wealth building and building economies for individuals, for companies, for community, for our people. And we do that today. Let me first welcome my writing partner, Brenda Lyle-Gray, who joins me every day from the mountains of New Mexico. Brenda, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon.
Good to see you.
Enjoying this fall weather.
Yeah, it's very nice here. Cool.
70 and 80 degrees. I love it. You feel healthy.
Where you are, you mean? Well, here it's like 30 degrees last
No
night. 40
kidding already?
degrees in certain places, yeah.
Wow.
In the northern part of the state. But, you know, it's what we expect, and it invigorates us. Well, today I want to bring in our guest to talk about the question of business and wealth creation. My guest is the leader of an organization called the FINNOVATION Lab. There's a nonprofit arm of that called FINNOVATION Institute. And what they do is work with early stage entrepreneurs, creating a cohort for its fellowship program. And that program helps the fellows develop innovative and financially sustainable social business models. And the businesses will range from early stage, idea stage to early stage startups. It's a 9-month program that began a couple weeks ago and runs through June of 2023. I think they're in the 5th cohort of the program right now. Let me introduce and bring in Connie Rutledge. She's the CEO of FINNOVATION. Connie, good afternoon. Welcome to the conversation.
Hello, thank you. It's nice to be here.
Well, let's do FINNOVATION 101 first of all. And before we get started, let me just tell you that the style and strategy here is conversational.
All right.
Nobody's scripted, and we just want to be curious about each other, about our sense of what the world holds for us and what we are delivering to the world as people that are committed to justice, to equity, to opportunity, and to individual and collective, self-realization. I think that kind of covers almost everything, you know. So let me start by asking you, welcoming you again and asking you to give us FINNOVATION 101. What's the basic idea and proposition?
Sure. So FINNOVATION Lab opened in 2018, and it was the brainchild of Jackie Berglund, who is the founder of Finnegan's Brew Co. And the beer company has been around for 20 years. And she originally set it up as a social enterprise. So some of the profits were used to fight hunger in the communities where the beer is purchased. And that continues through this day. And so her idea for FINNOVATION Lab was to create a resource and a hub for other entrepreneurs who want to create a social impact through their business model. And so part of how we do that is the fellowship program. That's kind of our flagship program. It started in 2018 as well. It's entirely funded by the Bush Foundation. So if you're familiar at all with the Bush Fellowship, it's similar in that it is a leadership development program. It provides a living stipend to the participants while they are in the program. But it's focused on social entrepreneurship as a way to develop leadership skills and create new businesses that are trying to create sizable impact in our communities around problems that have been persistent and not effectively solved by policy or philanthropy.
Okay, keep going. I mean, this is great. And we're showing your website, so this is cool.
Yeah. So the other thing, like we have a 10,000 square foot space in downtown Minneapolis. We're right on the edge of downtown in Elliott Park neighborhood. And so part of the vision is to create that kind of serendipity that can happen when you have people that are committed to a more equitable world and a more creative business approach. So we have co-working and events that we do in that space, and it's also the home to our fellowship program. And I originally came in to the FINNOVATION Institute or into FINNOVATION Lab uh, to do curriculum development for the fellowship program. And so I was really intrigued because I've been interested in these concepts for a while, but there was a lot of resistance in kind of what I would call the old guard of startup world, where it was you really need to focus on profitability uh, and just getting the financing, really making the money, and then you give back to the community. But I used to work at the University of Minnesota, and as I was there, I saw generations of students start to be more and more interested in blurring those lines and saying, why do I have to wait? I want to have a social impact right away if I can. And I want to build a business in a really conscientious way so I'm not exploiting the planet, people, neighborhoods. And so FINNOVATION Lab really offered me an opportunity to really dive in and explore how could I take what I'd learned in the world of startups and working with lots of entrepreneurs and apply it to people who were driven by a social mission.
Let me say hello and thank Michelle Madison, who's watching us on Facebook. Also to our own North Minneapolis, Lynn Crockett. Lynn is a stellar innovator, leader, educator in the community. So Lynn, thank you for weighing in. And Lynn, if you got a question or comment, we'll put up the contact or the link. You can join you and also Maya Smith, who's an RN. She's asking, what is your next start date? So thank you for the question. Thank you for listening. And Maya, if you want to join the conversation as well, we're going to post the StreamYard link and we'll watch for you. Welcome you to the conversation. The project supports these startup entrepreneurs. What does that support look like? How much is it and what's it intended to do? What does it allow them to do? And how
Sure.
critical is that for someone who's in an idea stage? To my knowledge, most people I know, at least where I come from, even if you got a good idea, you don't have money, lack of capital, lack of resources, and lack of knowledge of how to get the money impedes so much, even at the stage of ideation. People just give up because they don't see a way to taking their idea to a place where they can even test to see if it has value or not. What are you able to do differently?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think, entrepreneurship, no matter when or how you do it, is a difficult journey at the beginning. But it is true that a lot of people at the idea stage, it's hard to find support for people who haven't done it before, uh, don't have any revenue, like haven't necessarily developed a product or service yet. And that's one of the things that we wanted to try to approach, right? Is how can we help nurture good ideas? And at the very least, actually not even at the very least, at the center of it is the founder, right? The individual who has that capacity for leadership. And entrepreneurship is a skill set. And we come in with a curriculum that is focused in the principles of design thinking and really looking at that opportunity and analyzing, okay, you have a good idea. Is it a good business, right?
Mhm.
Like, can you make money at this? Can it be financially sustainable? And if not, what can we do to adjust and see if we can find that better market opportunity and stay true to the kernel in the idea. So that we use a lot of what is called the lean canvas or lean startup methodology, where you really are trying to move through who is the customer,
Mhm.
what problem are you solving for them, and how are they solving it today? Trying to get into that mindset and that empathetic mode of understanding the customer and the world that they live in and how they would view the product or service that you want to bring in through your business. So that's critical in terms of the curricular component. So part of the fellowship program is a fairly rigorous curriculum. We have a lot of folks that come in who are passionate and knowledgeable about a particular issue, but maybe haven't worked in a business environment, and they certainly haven't started a company before. We have people who have some of that as well, but that curriculum is designed to kind of help people wrap their heads around everything from the strategy of designing a business and a product that fits the market, making sure you've got to fit with what's going on in the world. And then also looking at the nuts and bolts, right? How do we set up a legal entity? What about accounting? How do I figure my costs and build a financial model? And trying to connect to resources in the community. Because I will say the ecosystem here in the Twin Cities in particular has evolved so much in the past 20 years. There are a lot of good resources available for entrepreneurs, and no one program is necessarily going to fit the needs for everyone. So we really encourage anyone who comes through the FINNOVATION Lab to understand what other resources are out there and how to move from idea stage to launch to growth, and like tap into the ecosystem in different ways as the company and the entrepreneur evolve. But for our program, the curriculum is just one component. So we know that there's some learning and skill acquisition that can happen, but there's also a personal journey that is part of entrepreneurship. And so we pair every member of a cohort with a mentor. And in the last 2 cohorts, we've added leadership coaches as well. So the mentor is designed to be kind of a business advisor, someone who has particular expertise in an industry that the entrepreneur is working in. And then the leadership coach is more around managing kind of the roller coaster of the experience. There are highs and lows, and helping people think about time management, moving goals forward. And then, of course, we've got program folks that are also deeply involved on the business advice side, and helping bring that cohort together. Because a cohort model, one reason that we are so committed to that is the peer-to-peer support and the importance of those relationships. Every founder needs to know other entrepreneurs. It's not uncommon that someone who's trying to strike out on their own, the family, friends are a little bit like, why would you want to do this? You're really putting yourself through the ringer. And so it's great for them to have a network to rely on with each other. And so we try to build that into the way the program operates as well, so that there are strong relationships in and amongst the cohort. And we've seen that from cohort 1 and 2 who have been out of the program for a while. That's what I know the best, that they have really kept those relationships moving forward. They collaborate with each other, they use each other as sounding boards, and help celebrate each other's wins along the way as well. I feel like I'm talking a lot, but I'm going to tell you one more thing.
Go ahead. No, but I want you to talk. Just flow with it. Go ahead. It's great.
Which is the living stipend. And that is the other thing that makes this program particularly unique, and I think also particularly effective, because it can be a challenge to start a company and hold a full-time job, right? Which is what a lot of people have to do because you have bills to pay. And so the rationale behind the fellowship stipend is you get $50,000 over the course of 9 months. You're in the program, and then an additional $3,000 to contribute to healthcare expenses. So that stipend is designed to not be used for business expenses. That's kind of a weird component, but what it is designed to is to cover rent or mortgage, childcare, groceries, things of that nature, and then also learning expenses. So if there is additional self-design learning that someone wants to do, they want to take an online course, they want to travel to go to a particular conference related to the work that they're doing, that can all be covered by the stipend. And I think that creates opportunities for people to really dive deep and dig into the problem and the idea that they're working on, and launch the business, hopefully. 9 months is a quick launch from idea to launch. So I want to be cautious about that.
Mhm.
But there is at least this time to take a moment, really try to reduce some of the distractions and know that at least some of your bills are covered, if not all of your bills are covered, and you can dig into being a startup founder.
That's awesome. I haven't really seen that feature in many places. Michelle asked, what are the advantages of government-sponsored programs for MBE and WBE programs, minority business enterprise, and women-owned business enterprise programs for minorities? And to my knowledge, this is the first where I have seen a living stipend or support for your living while you develop your idea, but maybe there are other models like that out there. Uh, how did you all come up with this strategy?
Well, when the FINNOVATION Lab was an idea itself, that became a point of conversation was founders have a hard time starting
Mhm.
companies because of these other constraints. And the Bush Foundation was a fantastic partner for us in that they took the model of their leadership program, their fellowship program, which also provides a living stipend for people. And that's more of a um, change maker and kind of often mid-career
Mhm.
folks who are saying, I'm going to dive into this new area. I need time and energy to focus there, and that the Bush Fellowship supports that work. And so it's kind of free form. And that's the great thing about it, is that you can use it to cover the things that are normally not necessarily covered by that kind of money. So that was where the idea came from. It is really modeled on that existing fellowship program, but
Mhm.
applied to entrepreneurship.
I can tell you it's a great idea. I mean, just from my experience as an entrepreneur, the stress,
Yeah.
the stress of money is real. And the stress of not knowing, not having, of hoping, of wanting, and even if you have great plans, if you're not uh, having the money in the bank, and even having the money in the bank is not the answer because
Mhm.
it's going to run out, right?
Yeah.
If the idea doesn't catch or the sales don't happen or if the support doesn't come. But having that support, I think, is phenomenal and awesome. So, on behalf of the people that you all have supported, I'm going to say thank you. That this is I'm affirming the wisdom of the strategy that you've taken. Tell me your own story again. You mentioned it, but how you came to the company, but just go deeper into your passion as an educator or as a trainer and how that brought you into this. And I kind of want to hear about how, the founder of the brewery was able to create this nonprofit and to make that link to Bush to find a partner like that to bring this idea from her mind or their minds into the reality of a functional enterprise. I also want you to talk about, we hear the term all the time, social entrepreneurship. Because on the one hand, you've talked about what businesses do, what business owners have to do, what business means. And that suggests a certain mindset. Then you also talked about social
Oh.
entrepreneurs. And where do those intersect? What does it mean to be a social business? What does it change in terms of the dynamic of the expectation for profitability? How is profit measured differently if it is for a social entrepreneur or a social enterprise? So yeah, you can take any of that and take it anyhow you want to take it, but we'll just flow with that and have the discussion.
Sure. Let's see how to weave those together.
Sure.
Um, I'm going to start with social entrepreneurship because I think a lot of the dialogue in the past decade or so has been around defining what is this, right?
Mhm.
What is social entrepreneurship? And I'm a firm believer in a pretty big tent around the term because I just want people to recognize that the way we've done business is exploitive.
Hmm.
And we see that, right, in the economic inequality in the world, in the environmental degradation. It's kind of built to be that way. And I think that we've done it without a lot of consciousness. And I think people are a little more aware now of how systems work and the interdependency of those. And at least I know I and many other people that I have met really feel like there is a way to harness some of the power of capitalism, but to make it more conscious and to make it so that it is not exploitive, and that we can at least make it less exploitive. Right. So when I talk about social entrepreneurship, I talk about it as an experiment, right? This is not a done deal. We are learning every time. What does it mean to be a social enterprise? And what does it mean to combine business principles and social principles? Because quite frankly, the social problems that we face as a country and a world are big, interconnected, and nuanced and difficult. And one company is unlikely to fix those big problems. And so you kind of have to get comfortable with the idea of incremental aggregated change, right? If we are all pulling in the same direction, that helps us get to where we want to go, as opposed to being at cross purposes. But when I think about social entrepreneurship, it is a dedicated thoughtfulness to how am I going to create this product or service, right? So it can be everything from my materials and ingredients, how they're sourced, whether they're equitably paid for, how my labor force is hired, retained, and paid, what the company culture is like. It can also be as simple as the Finnegan's model, although I would hesitate to say that that's entirely simple. But she's a kind of a traditional social enterprise where you make profit off of a product, and then you redirect that profit to a cause. Now, Finnegan's has done a tremendous job in infusing their brand with that mission, right? They turn beer into food. That's how they describe it. It's very simple. So
let me throw a wrinkle in the soup.
Okay.
Okay. Just to make it more complex and more fun to talk about. And I love the fact that you use the word avoiding exploitative or exploitation, right? Minimizing it, reducing it if possible. How does the concept of extraction fit in that process? What is my watch is going off, making noise. So, what does and this kind of applies to the Finnegan model. There's the idea, as I understand it, that you do the business along business principles, and business is always, roughshod, gung ho, get it done, take it out, package it, sell it, and then enjoy the profit, extract from either labor or raw materials or whatever sources there are, and modify, transform, and bring a product, good, or service to the market and enjoy a profit from the work that you put together to make all that happen. And as I understand what you said about the Finnegan model, is that profit being redirected to social good. But extraction takes place and is not apologized for, or maybe even mitigated, or even acknowledged. It's accepted as a way of the world. Is there a discussion about the approach to doing business that's substantially different, that is not extractive? And I'm not sure I know what that means, Connie, but I'm just trying to play with the words here and have you work with me on it. Is there a notion of doing things that is more cooperative, more collaborative, is less, as you say, exploitative, but also not extractive, but utilizes resources differently? What comes to mind?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Yeah.
And I would again say it's in motion, right? And I don't know that anyone has done it perfectly, because when you're creating products, especially, right, you are transforming material goods. So you are often extracting and turning it into something new. But I do see that there is opportunities, and the best entrepreneurs that are working in this space are always looking for ways to close that loop, at least, right? So if I'm pulling something out of the earth, how do I regenerate that? So, the phrase is the circular economy, or creating a circularity in your product, and sometimes a service, but I haven't seen that as much. I will stick to products. So a good example actually from Finnegan's that is just coming together right now, there is another company in our sort of universe called Net Zero that is a food waste upcycling company. And they have a technology that can take used brewer grain, dry it and sanitize it and make it useful again. So they often grind that into flour and make new products out of that flour. And so Finnegan's has partnered with them for their spent brewer grains, not going into flour, because food shelves, their primary partner in the social mission side is the food group, and they provide fresh produce specifically to those food shelves. And so the food group has said, we really need stable, shelf-stable things like pasta. We get enough bread. We get a lot of things out of the grocery stores that are day old and all of that. So they're going to work with Net Zero, the food group, and Finnegan's to take those grains that have been spent in terms of creating the beer, but they still have some nutritional value, pull those out, turn those into pasta, and then give that pasta to the food group to distribute to people in need. So that's an example of at least trying to find a way to close the loop and get more use out of the resources that have been extracted. But I think the question that you raise is a philosophical one, right? Of how can we do business differently? And I think that's one of the best things about my job, quite frankly, is getting to work with founders who are looking at that, right? They are constantly looking for ways of how can I do a business that fits with my values, makes me feel like I'm contributing to the world and not subtracting from it. And so, that is happening, but it is, there's maybe evolving best practices in that, and trying to especially look for ways to regenerate resources and to reuse and reduce resources, physical resources, as much as possible. I think there's a lot to be done on the labor side as well, especially as we look at the global economy and think about not only what's happening here, we've got labor issues in the United States, but when we look at global supply chains and thinking about not only the climate impact, but the personal impact of what people in other countries are getting paid to bring us cheap products. And it's a catch-22, in my opinion. Like there are some difficult things to source there, because when, people are living with limited amounts of income, right? Most of us are living with limited amounts of income. And so there is an attraction to cheap products, but we have to understand why they're cheap, I think. And that is often on the backs of other people. And can we create an economy that is generally more equitable, where we don't have these huge gaps in income and people make enough money to satisfy their needs and aspirations, and that they can do that in a way that doesn't require other parts of the world to be in poverty?
So I raised the question, this speaks to the comment you're making now. Why is the world accepting of the idea that Belgian chocolate is the best chocolate in the world? I don't believe they grow chocolate in Belgium. It's number one. And I tell the story that my wife, Bobby, and I were sitting on a veranda in probably Montego Bay or Ocho Rios or somewhere in Jamaica, and looking out, having some coffee, looking over in the distance, a cane field. And when you go to get the packet of sugar to sweeten the coffee, it's either Domino's or some other brand name that I recognize. And the package says made in Louisiana or made in USA. And so my thought is, how am I sitting here in Jamaica where they grow the cane? And why am I using sugar in a package from the United States? How come that is not refined, produced, and sold here? So is there a component in this discussion about extraction that deals with place and activity um, centered at the point or the place of the labor, the place of the mineral resource that challenges this notion of extracting something from one place and developing it, producing it, converting it somewhere else to the benefit of the somewhere else and to the detriment of the people who did the mining, the growing, and who ultimately be part of the consuming of it, but at a higher cost. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I am not an expert, I will say that, in that particular scenario, but I do think there's some movement there. I think it's happening in those countries,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's a grassroots movement, and I think the challenge is going against the power of capital,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the systems that have been built up, the manufacturing, shipping, the money, and you have probably come across Decolonizing Wealth by Edgar Villanova. He's maybe one of the leading thinkers in some of that kind of work around thinking about how to return the wealth that has been earned from extraction to the countries it was extracted from. But I unfortunately don't have any great examples for you.
Talk about your own story again.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So I came to this work because
Let me take
yeah,
it back further than that. Who's your mom and who's your
yeah,
dad?
yeah.
Who's your grandpa and your grandma? Tell me the family story.
They are part of the story.
Okay,
Uh,
great.
so my dad was an entrepreneur. He started a company when I was 8. He and my mother got married when they were 16 and 17. I'm the youngest of 4. They both grew up on farms. When I was a kid, my maternal grandparents were still farming. My paternal grandparents had moved into town at that point, and my grandfather worked for the roads department. This was in Council Bluffs, Iowa. So I'm a Minnesota transplant. But so I saw my dad go from, he was a plumber, he was a commercial plumber. So he worked in large buildings with big, mechanical contracting work. And I saw him go from like being a supervisor on job sites. I remember visiting the trailers and the job sites when I was a little kid. And then we moved to Lincoln, Nebraska when I was 8, and he started his own company there. So I grew up with him and my mom clearing off the dining room table at night after dinner and rolling out blueprints and estimating jobs, and that was every night for a long time. So there was no popcorn being made. There was nothing going on in the kitchen because they had to concentrate. And, it's very detailed work as you're going through and looking at all of the components you need for plumbing in that kind of a job. So, but my dad taught me a lot around the potential for entrepreneurship and owning a company to create wealth. That he basically looked at the situation and said, I was making a pretty decent wage. He was a union plumber, but that he felt like he would never actually get ahead unless he owned something.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was how he decided to take the leap. So he would have been, let's see, about in his late 30s. I'm going to say 39 or so when he started the company. And honestly, it was when by the time I was a young adult, looking back at that period, I could see the shift that happened in my household. We really went from what I would call working class to middle class, right? By the time I graduated from high school, my 2 brothers are quite a bit older than me. There's a big gap between them and myself and my sister. And so what they experienced as teenagers versus what I experienced, we actually took family vacations when I was a teenager. They never got to do that. So I learned a lot from him around kind of the logic behind entrepreneurship and why you would want to start a company, and how hard it is, quite frankly, because it aged him. You can see that in family photographs, but it also was so fulfilling to him. And as watching him when he sold his business, ended up with another company after that, and became president of that company through a weird set of circumstances and made it profitable. And so by the time he retired, it was amazing and inspiring to meet all of the people whose lives he had interacted with, right? Whether it was his partners or his employees or people who were his customers. His retirement party was quite an eye-opener for me. I was probably just graduated from college at the time. So, I learned a lot from him. My mother also was an entrepreneur later in her life. She was a homemaker most of her life. And then when I left home, she decided that she would get a job, but no one wanted to pay her what she thought she was worth. And so she opened a Play It Again sports store. So she was a franchise owner. And at that point, my folks had enough capital to make that happen for her. But she wanted the support of a franchise model. And I went through that training with her as a summer job to kind of learn what she needed to know for getting inventory and selling and things like that. So I grew up in that environment, right? So that is part of the story. But I have never studied business. That is kind of the weird twist in my personal career. I studied sociology. I have my bachelor's in sociology. I was originally going to get a PhD in sociology, went to graduate school, and felt like it was too far removed from real people. And so I didn't finish. I came to Minnesota at that point. No one would hire me as a social theorist. And so I ended up working for a small company that did market research and high technology. I got really lucky. I worked for a gentleman who was a fantastic mentor. He would give me things to do that I had no idea how to do. And he would just say, well, give it a try and we'll go from there. So I learned everything from how to set up a server, right? And do email and connect to the internet in the very early days of the internet, to accounting, to client contracts, to helping run with contractors. It was an amazing learning experience. And then went with him when he joined with 3 other partners to start an early stage venture capital firm. And so I learned even more in that environment because I was sitting listening to pitches, listening to these 4 former CEOs critique and strategize about these business opportunities, how they made decisions, how they really dug in with those entrepreneurs that they did fund and help them grow, and bring all of their expertise and their networks to bear, and learn about the venture capital world, which is a rarefied world. So that really set me up to work in education. And I went to the U of M after a short stint with a startup. I ended up at the U getting my master's in public affairs because I was really interested in renewable energy, and I couldn't get any of my venture capital partners to invest in that arena due to government, basically. They didn't want to deal with the government. And I said, well, I want to know more about that, right? How could we craft policy that would be more welcoming to startups? But I ended up working at the U for a while, 8 years. And I was in a really unique experiential learning program there with MBA students all around new ventures. So my partner had come from the corporate world and did innovation at Best Buy and other big companies. And I came from the startup world. And together we recreated this curriculum around innovation, opportunity analysis, and putting students on real world projects, both with startups and larger companies, all looking at new markets. And it was in that capacity where I started to see this coming together, other people thinking about ways to combine the world of social impact and business, and carving out projects that I would call social venture projects in my last probably 4 or 5 years as I was working at the U. So that was the beginning of that. And it has grown so much since those, 2010, 2011. It's way more common. There's a lot more examples to choose from and to highlight. But it's still really hard. I mean, it is against the tide. And to your earlier question of what's different about it, like profitability is the same. Like you're still trying to be financially sustainable and ideally profitable. Not all business models can be fully profitable, but depends kind of on the social mission, I would say, and the population that they are working with.
You got to have money to run the business, period.
But you got to have it. And the idea is hopefully if you need grant funding or government funding, hopefully you can supplement that with something that's a little bit more under your control with that earned income model. That's the goal. And some are purely for-profit entities, and they have that social mission baked in. I'll give you an example, actually, from the first cohort of the fellowship. We have 2 that have done really well from that first cohort. Yeah, actually, we have 3 that have done really well. But Mosier is one that I think he really, Nick Alm is the founder, and Nick put together this idea of wanting to support LGBTQ founders is where it originally started. And then realizing that many workers in the United States are in the closet at work. And corporations, companies of all sizes have a difficulty retaining and LGBTQ employees for culture reasons. So Mosier created a B2B model, a business-to-business model, where they go in and coach and consult with those companies to reach that population and try to improve the outcomes for LGBTQ employees. So that's an example of building in a business model that is having a positive impact, both for companies on their equity goals, but really for the people that are getting employed, where they can be themselves at work and they can earn a living that is a sustainable living. So that's one example of that kind of model. Another one is Alysha Price from cohort 2. Her company is The Price Dynamic. And I was hoping she could join us today. Unfortunately, she could not at the last minute.
We can come back to her in the future as well. So,
she's fantastic. She's a great example of someone who came through the program. She was an expert in what she knew, which was co-parenting and helping people be effective co-parents so that the child stayed at the center of their work. And she was really passionate about making sure that Black kids in particular were not held to low expectations because they came from single parent households. She wanted to remove that as a reason for explaining away racial achievement gaps. And so her focus on co-parenting was, originally working directly with individual parents and doing kind of a fee for service that way. In the end, she ended up building this incredible model where she works with the public systems, where she's mediating between parents who have been through the court system for custody or whatever, and working individually with parents and working with schools and helping teachers and administrators think about how to interact in an effective co-parenting family. So it doesn't default just to the mother per se when there is another co-parent in the picture, and making sure the schools know that and know how to communicate with all members in the family who are parenting. And she has grown, she has hired people. She is a force. And like when she's in the room, you can feel she sees things it differently. right?
Awesome.
She's a founder. And I think that's true of a lot of really amazing entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
They see the world a little bit differently, and they see opportunity where other people just see a problem.
That's really a note. In my notes for this conversation, as you're speaking, one of the words I wrote down was problem and solution. And the common thread here is that you are both identifying, and people are identifying themselves as the solution and not the problem. The problems abound, they exist everywhere. But the question is, will you be in that problem cohort confined there without a pathway of transformation, or will you discover your identity, your role, your capacity to be the answer, to
Yeah.
be the solution? And as a problem solver, you then recast your image of yourself and create this idea, and know that you become entrepreneurial. That's what entrepreneurism is problem solving. So I say, Connie, to people all the time, it's got to be part of our cultural initiative, our goal as African people, as Black people, to change the perception of who we are to ourselves first and to the world. So that what if somebody shows up, gets off the 5 p.m. shuttle from Mars and looks at Al McFarlane and Brenda Gray walking down the street, and one will say to the other, "Oh, those people there, that guy McFarlane, that lady Brenda Gray, those are entrepreneurs." How do you develop that identity, that brand across the planet, so that people grow up seeing themselves as problem solvers, not as the problem? And as it stands, our culture, our people, our history has been cast unfairly, inappropriately, in an exploitative way as a problem for somebody else to solve, right?
Yes.
And we have to, from my point of view, Connie, take back our space, our time, our resources, our identity, and our energy, and believe and invest in our capacity to serve ourselves and to solve our problems. And in doing so, we really strengthen, enhance opportunity for everybody else on the planet. It's not, if I win, you got to lose.
Right.
My definition of winning is that everybody can win. It doesn't have to be at your expense. It can be my winning benefits you and benefits me, benefits all of us, and respects and honors the the in the finite resources on the planet, and does not extract them without a plan for restoring that which has been used, borrowed, right, from
Yeah.
the planet itself. What do you think?
I agree completely. I think that that is one of the powers of entrepreneurship, is to take control of your destiny, you know, and to and, and to transform the world as part of it. And I will say, in my experience, um, the Black entrepreneurs that I have met and worked with are very passionate about exactly what you're saying, which is not being part of the problem,
Mhm.
right? Of business, right? Wanting to do a business that is good for everybody, and especially for the Black community.
Mhm.
And it starts there. The passion and the compassion come from that lived experience in what I've observed. And so I can't agree more. I think that's true with every group. I think it's been true with women. I think it's true with the LGBTQ community. And one of the things that's so powerful about the social enterprise models is being able to say, this is part of your narrative, right?
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
can talk about that personal narrative, that social narrative, that systemic issue, and how it has created the need for your business, right? You don't exist outside of the world that you live in, the context in which you exist. And I think that can be a really powerful thing. It's a delicate issue sometimes for each individual. And we work on that in the fellowship program in terms of creating your own narrative and what you want to share about how you came to this idea and this solution, so that there is a comfort level and not a feeling, again, of exploitation, of saying, oh, well, I grew up in this fashion and that led me down this road. Not everyone is comfortable getting quite that personal, and I think that's 100% okay. And it's a matter of saying, I live in the world is flawed. I'm here to make it less flawed.
I'm bringing my brick to build something that all of us will grow with and grow on in the future. Connie, I am loving this conversation with you. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me and Brenda, to hang out with our audiences here. The name FINNOVATION, so explain the name.
It's a combination of Finnegan's and innovation.
Okay.
That's all it is.
Simple. Good. It's a good name. I love it. Brenda, any questions or comments? Brenda?
Minneapolis and be a part of that program.
We would welcome you.
America's doing such great things now for Black women, and I'm saying, oh my goodness, I need to be there. So kudos. I love the components of the fellowship. That 50,000 takes a big load off of people trying to be creative and really moving their business, and they need that coalition, the partnerships. So what a great program, Connie. Congratulations.
Well, let me do this. I think it's always good to name things and name people, say names. So I have the press release up, and I just want to speak with a sense of positivity. The names of the people who are in the current cohort, they include Anthony Drews. He's the founder of Noski Games. It's a board and hand game company that supports language acquisition and preservation of native languages. Your current cohort includes Jennifer Glickstein. Correct me if I'm saying it the wrong way. She's the founder of Dress Up to Calm Down. It's a business that creates colorful and fun, weighted costumes for children who suffer from anxiety or sensory unease. Tommy McBrayer, president of Don't Shoot Guns, Shoot Hoops. Wow. It's a community-based business that combines team sports with violence prevention programming. Rosemary Olatunbosun is the creator of Eso. It's a line of delicious beverages dedicated to health and wellness with ingredients sourced from West Africa. Awesome. Hillary Ote, founder of Queermunity, Real Estate Collaborative, an initiative for the LGBTQ community. Awesome. Ben Presley is co-founder of Impact Outfitter. It's a marketing tech company that is trying to equip outdoor recreation sales with greater levels of impact through a revenue sharing model. So innovation. Dr. Ayana Kwamina is a board certified naturopathic doctor who's interested in creating a mobile clinic to help BIPOC and women in their holistic health journeys. Lakeisha Witter. Dr. Lakeisha Witter is a special education consultant, owner of Live Organically. And she's going to be developing an adaptive learning tech educational program that focuses on socio-emotional development for students with disabilities. The final person in your cohort, Tang Yang, she helps run her family business, Hmong Specialty Plants and Herbs, And she plans to develop that into a cultural hub for teaching and learning about plant medicines. Wow, what a wonderful group of people.
And diverse. Look at all of the ethnic backgrounds.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Wonderful.
I'm so excited about this cohort. I can't even express it. Like, we're just getting rolling. We've been started September 15th. But yes, it's an amazing cohort, diverse ideas, diverse people. I think they could be one of the best yet.
Well, we're out of time, but here's what I'd love, Connie. I'd love to bring each of these entrepreneurs onto this program over the course of the next several months. So if you will, think about how we can make that happen, so we can help them tell their story. And we think that that will simply trigger this spirit, this desire, this opportunity in other people as well. Connie, thank you so much.
Thank you, Al. Thank you, Brenda. This has been the highlight of my day, if not my whole month. I really appreciate the conversation and the opportunity to tell the story of FINNOVATION and the fellows. And I would love to bring them all on and have them tell their own stories. That's a great idea.
Let's make it happen. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.